thank you very much, everyone. It's nice to know who we're speaking to now, having had the introductions. We come into this project, Joe and I, at the very, very end of your seminar series, and I'm sort of regretting having not been to some of the earlier seminars from what I've heard of them. But for us, I think this is not so much the end of anything; it's the beginning of something. Hopefully, in our relationship, but also in the projects that Joe and I are talking about. They're projects which are quite new. And they're projects which have lots of openings for us to work with each other and also for other people here. We were asked to bring a question to you, so that also signifies a beginning rather than an end. And the question that we put together from our two quite different, two different but quite well-related projects is this: how can community cohesion be supported through an understanding of the everyday experiences and untold stories of Muslim communities? And I would multiply that word Muslim to also refer to Pakistani communities and Asian communities. But we wanted to think about that as a twofold question. One is a question about methodology and some of the methodologies that we are beginning to use and that we want to say a bit about. But the other, and that's also a methodological question, but the other question is how those methodologies have openings in them to work with communities, to co-produce knowledge, and also to work with partners, stakeholders, including DCLG and other people who are here. So we want to say, just to announce, in a way, two projects and to mention some of the methods that we think will answer those two questions.
Okay, so the research that I'm currently working on, the title of the research is Exploring the Lives of Muslim Men in Rotherham, post-J. So what I've been doing over the last 2 or 3 months is interviewing local men in Rotherham, doing in-depth, qualitative, relatively unstructured interviews with local men. I've recruited the participants with the support of local women in Rotherham, and these are women who I've got to know over the last 2 years. So although the research has only been taking place over the last 2 or 3 months, it's taken me a couple of years to get to know people and to get to know the local kind of social and political context in Rotherham. And people like Zainab here have been absolutely instrumental in me being able to carry out that research in terms of supplying advice and support, but also finding me people to interview as well. So basically, my research, one of the questions I've been asked quite a lot is why I'm specifically focusing on Muslim men. One of the reasons is kind of strategic. I'm aware of some really good research that's going on in Rotherham, particularly with Muslim women, research that Zainab and Kate and people are doing in Rotherham. So I thought it would be useful for me to take a slightly different perspective and to focus on men specifically. Perhaps rather obviously, since the publication of the J report, working in Rotherham over the last couple of years, I've become aware that there's been a very specific effect on local men, and this is something that I wanted to look at and examine and kind of capture in the research that I'm doing. So I am paying attention, so you can see from the title that I'm looking at gender and generation as part of the research. So it's not that I'm not looking at women, and I'm looking at intergenerational relationships as well. The research that I'm doing touches on the lives of the Muslim community, I guess, in Rotherham. So it touches on the lives of Muslim men and women and people of different generations, and I've captured some kind of really, I'm really pleased with the kind of quality of data that I'm getting that can help reflect that as well. The other point that I wanted to make was about the importance of time and timing, really. I think that in terms of the research, these are kind of two of the key challenges I've had. So Muslim men are usually referred to as a hard-to-reach group among researchers, and I think that I've got around that by having the support of Muslim women. So I've not gone through the kind of usual channels to recruit Muslim men, so for example through mosques and things. I've actually gone through local Muslim women who helped me to recruit the men, and that's kind of increased the success of the research, really. And the other key thing that I think it's important to stress about the research is that the importance of time. It's taken me quite a long time to get to the stage where I felt that it was actually okay to do this research. I don't think it would have been appropriate a year or 2 years ago. So having had all the contact I've had in Rotherham over the last couple of years has enabled me to get to the stage where I feel that confident in going in and doing the research that I've done. Obviously a very sensitive local context, and I've had to negotiate that very sensitively as I've gone along. And the other point that I wanted to make was about relationship building. I really could not have done this without the women in Rotherham who've supported me. It wouldn't have been possible to get the support of the men who've been involved in the research. It wouldn't have been possible without having built up relationships over the last couple of years with local women in Rotherham.
Okay. I think an awful lot of things are said about the groups of people that we're researching who are young British Muslims of Pakistani heritage. A lot of things are said about their relationships and about their sexualities, not just young, but all people in those categories. And I think we didn't want to be too distracted by the Casey report today, but that was another place in which things were said, in particular in relation to transnational marriage. Transnational marriage is extremely important, of course, among this group. More than half of the members of it will marry a spouse from Pakistan. But that was linked in the Casey report to high levels of segregation among both Pakistanis and Muslims. Those are some of the things. We hear many other things said about this group in relation to child sexual exploitation, in relation to forced marriage. It's a very problematic topic and a very important topic, I think. So what we wanted to do in our project, which has been funded by the AHRC, began 6 months ago and it runs for 3 years, is not to attend to the stories that are told about members of these groups, but actually to listen to the stories told by them. The sociologist Ken Plummer tells us that these days everyone wants to tell their story about sex and about relationships. That's least true of members of this group. It's very actually hard to hear stories about what young members of these groups experience and want and feel. So that's what we are trying to do, and the methods that we are using to try and do that include community interviewing. The postdoc on the project, Nafisa Ali, who sadly was ill and so couldn't join us today, she's got lots of relationships with members of these groups in Yorkshire, in Glasgow and Newcastle, the 3 regions we're looking at. So she's able to work within her networks, but what we've also done is to go beyond that to train up members of communities to interview each other, and also to bring together workshops in which people from those communities can come together and find ways of telling stories. So those are the methods that we've used. We're sort of running out of time for a formal presentation, I think. Do we need to?
We have another minute or so.
Okay, all right, that's fine. We wanted to announce our project. I think we've done that. So this is the website, and here's Nafisa. I at least brought her along in a picture, if not in person. And what we wanted to do was just to say really that the methods that we're using have all sorts of scope for participating with individuals and with communities. The community interviewer training is also capacity building, helping people to gain skills that they can go on and use themselves, and the storying workshops the same, and that with individuals and with communities, and that's something which is true of your work as well, Jo, is that right?
Yeah, and I guess the wider issue with my research is that I don't think that we know enough about the lived experience of Muslim men, and that's something that I'm really keen to start to address with the research and start to tap into. I think there are lots of stories that are not told about Muslim men. We hear these very dominant stories and they're very partial, and to get a kind of better, more rounded understanding of Muslim men's lives, which can then feed into things like integration and cohesion. And obviously this research is a smaller project, but I'd like to think that it's something that could be kind of seized on really and just listened to, that Muslim men's voices need to be heard more.